Hi friends, thank you for watching. The Simone Biles situation I think there's two extremes that are being pushed in the media, and neither extreme, I don't think either are very good, and I don't think either apply reason or logic. So I'd like to try to apply reason and logic to this situation, and tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I'm off or not. But first I want to say that Simone Biles, and we need to keep this in mind, was that she was sexually assaulted by a person named Larry Nassar. Now he was the U.S. Olympic team doctor. Now I think he was the gymnast doctor in 2016. I don't really know how long he was, but I know that he did sexually molest Simone Biles. He did sexually assault her, and a lot of people compare her to other athletes. Well, not a whole lot of other athletes have to deal with that. That's a tough thing to deal with. That's really over the top. And also, we need to keep in mind that Simone Biles, that whole extra year. Remember, that there's an extra year of training because there's a 5-year gap because of COVID. Every time she went to the U.S. Olympic Training Center, it was connected to Larry Nassar. So imagine, going to a place that was connected to your sexual assault. Now, this Larry Nassar person, he's in jail now, multiple cases of sexual assault, and he's life in prison. And frankly, I'm against the death penalty, but I, 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 I think in his case, I would be for it. In his case, I wouldn't be opposed to putting him in a cage with tying a T-bone steak around his neck, putting him in the cage with a hungry grizzly bear, and letting the grizzly bear rip him apart. Okay, that's just my opinion. But anyway, but we need to keep in mind that sexual assault because that's something not a lot of athletes have to deal with. And second, before I forget, in Russia, there was all these newspaper articles that said certain things about how they puffed up their team, and then they were they said that their team was so good that they put so much pressure on Simone Biles that caused her to quit. And that irritated me big time, and it should irritate a lot of us because if Russia, you guys have no right to say that. And this is what I mean when you watch the Olympics. And whatever sport, if there's a Russian athlete, you don't see Russia by their name. You see the ROC, which means Russian Athletic Committee, the Russian Olympic Committee. Why is that? In the United States, you don't see the American Olympic Committee. In Brazil, you don't see the Brazil Olympic Committee. But in Russia, you see the Russian Olympic Committee. Why is that? It's because there are so many Russians that were caught doping that Russia lost their ability to actually have a team, and the Russian athletes that were clean, they formed the Russian Olympic Committee. So if there's any nation that doesn't have a right to point finger and say that Simone Biles cracked under pressure, it's Russia. You guys lost that ability. You guys lost that right. Because so many of your athletes had to dope in order to think they could compete. So let's get to Simone Biles. For whatever reason, and I don't know all the reasons, but the stress, the pressure, the anxiety built up in her, and it caused her to have the twisties. Now, I'm not a gymnast. I don't know full well what the twisties is, but I do know that it caused her to have disorientation when she was in the air. She was disoriented. She couldn't tell where she was in the air compared to where the ground was, which would hurt her landing, obviously. And she posted a couple of videos of her training where it was pretty obvious that she did lose her ability to know where the ground was. She was lost in the air, and in practice, you could see this. So if she really was going through the twisties, which I had no reason to doubt she was. She's not lying about that. She should have, she has no business competing. If she's going through the twisties, she shouldn't put herself in danger. I mean, what do we want? Do we want her to break her neck? Do we want her to land on her head and get a concussion that might threaten her livelihood? No. I mean, who in the what kind of monster would want that to happen? I don't want her injured for life. I don't even want her seriously injured for a length of time. And some people might say, well, people have done it with a broken foot or something like that. Well, that might be true. But if you have a broken foot and that's the extent of your injuries, you're still not going to get disoriented in the air. Now it's going to perfect your performance and your landing, but you're still not at the risk that you would be if you had the twisties of landing on your neck and breaking your neck. So she made the right decision. I think she made the smart decision. However, she made the smart decision. Now why can't we just leave it at that? She shouldn't be applauded. We shouldn't make her a hero. We shouldn't try to give her as much credit as she won the gold for making a smart decision here. I mean, she made a smart. She did what she should have done. I mean, a pitcher in baseball, they shouldn't try pitching if they had a broken arm. I mean, so we shouldn't vilify her for this because I think she made the right decision. But on the other end, she's not more of a hero because she did this. She did what I think is the reasonable and rational thing to do. This is where things take a little curve, though, and I wouldn't say this as Simone Biles kind of didn't put this on herself. Now, I don't know to the extent where she read this, but there are pictures of her, with her uniform on that has the emblem of a goat. Now, I don't know if she did this for the U.S. trials, if she actually had this goat on at the at the Olympics. I don't know where she had it, but she had a goat emblem on her. Now, even if you just wear that once, during a competition, that says something. I mean, can you imagine like if another athlete, if LeBron James or if Tom Brady, or can you imagine someone walking around like in a competition with a goat emblem? Well, first of all, that wouldn't be allowed in the NFL, but if someone did, you'd be like, man, if you had that, you better step up and actually do it. Well, Simone Biles, she has this goat on her, and the anxiety and the stress and the pressure, and this is how I think it works, and it costs her the twisties. Friends, this is the hard reality, and I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying this. I'm really not. But the greatest of all time would know how to handle stress and anxiety better than actually on the biggest stage, on the Olympic stage, you wouldn't get the twisties. Okay, that's how I personally feel. I think that's a rational view. Now, Simone Biles is a great gymnast. She's the greatest of her generation. But the greatest of all time, I think she lost the right to call herself that. Now, yeah, she has a lot of world titles, but there's a difference between a world title and an Olympic title. The Olympics are the biggest, most prestigious event for the gymnast athletes. And these are two Olympics now, and she won. And she's still in her physical prime now. She is kind of remarkable because I think she's 24, which is old on the older end of the spectrum for a gymnast, and she's still really good. However, two Olympics that she was involved in, and she was involved in this Olympics, two Olympics that she was involved in, and she just has so far just the medals from 5 years ago. So, yeah, she does things that athletes 30 years ago couldn't have done in the gymnastics world. However, there's athletes, the scoring system is completely changed, and this is when you try to compare athletes from different eras, is you can't really do it because the game changes. You know, for like the game of basketball, is like someone like James Harden, he wouldn't be as good, 30 years ago because they didn't call as many fouls and he flops so often that so many of his points come from free throws. And that's what I just mean. The scoring system in gymnastics, and from what I've viewed, and I'm not a gymnastics expert, but things like grace and artistic creativity, they aren't valued as much as just raw power and athletic ability are now. So I think like when things like grace were like valued a lot more and your athletic power wasn't, I don't think Simone Biles would have been as good 30 years ago. She wouldn't be, but those athletes 30 years ago, they wouldn't be as good now. So when you talk about the greatest of all time, you're already like in an iffy situation there. I mean, it's like an endless debate. Simone Biles is not the clear cut greatest of all time, in my opinion, now. And I don't even know if she ever really was because of just how scoring and gymnastics has changed. However, if the anxiety and pressure and stress get the best of you and you actually end up with a form of twisties, which doesn't really happen that much to the greatest to like the top-notch greatest gymnast at the Olympics, but it happened to Simone Biles. Now, it may have happened before, but it's kind of uncommon to the best at the Olympics. It happened to Simone Biles. I think I think it, I think it's fair to say that she's not the greatest of all time. Not she might be in the running for it, but as the clear cut, no. So I think that's a rational view. I'm not being hard on Simone Biles. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I actually said she did the smart thing. However, she didn't have her anxiety and her stress controlled, which now I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know exactly how this works, but she didn't have it controlled to the extent that it did lead to the twisties, which it seems like the other top-notch athletes are, like the best of the best, like the Michael Phelps, like the Michael Jordans, like people like that. They're kind of able to control it a little bit, better than just going to the full-blown twisties and disorientation. That's part of being the best. That's part of the greatest of all time discussion is how well you can handle pressure. I mean, just on like skill level, LeBron James has so many advantages over Michael Jordan. But Michael Jordan, he showed up in the clutch. Peyton Manning, in the regular season, he was a far better quarterback than Tom Brady. But Tom Brady, he made it to the playoffs and he won seven out of 10 Super Bowls. And Tom Brady, he just went to a new team and he won the Super Bowl there with a torn MCL the entire year. So I mean, these are the type of things that like the greatest, and people still debate whether Tom Brady is even the greatest of all time. Some people think Lawrence Taylor is, some people think Jerry Rice is. So even after doing that, people still doubt that Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. So we talk about Simone Biles. Yes, she was awesome in one Olympics, and she's been awesome and so many world championships. But stress got the best. Stress and pressure got the best of her, and this second Olympics when she physically, was still really at her prime. She technically could do these events if it weren't for her disorientation. So we shouldn't be too hard on her. No, she's still a great gymnast. She's still one of the best. However, I think it would be wrong to applaud her and say, "Well, you're still the greatest of all time, even though this occurred to you." So I think we need to have a middle ground here. Yeah, we need to be compassionate, but let us not go and applaud somebody and try to just lift someone up and say, "Well, you're even more of a champion now because you recognize that you weren't able to do what you were able to do." Do you see what I'm trying to say? So Simone Biles at the end, I think I've said everything I've said. I'm just reiterating it now. I respect her very much, and despite what's happening now, when it's all said and done, I do think she is the best gymnast right now in the world. She was the best gymnast 5 years ago. Is she the greatest of all time? I don't think we can say that. But really, can we really ever really even say that though? Even if Simone Biles won the all around this year, even if she won 3 more golds, could we really say she was the greatest of all time? I mean, if you look in the history books of the gymnasts 30 years ago, there's some that are like really accomplished. So with the way the scoring system's changed, and you know what? The scoring system's going to change 30 years from now. So, in football, the scoring system doesn't really change. You have different rules, but the scoring system doesn't really change. And in basketball, you have like the shot clock, you have the three-point line, but really the scoring system doesn't change that much. I mean, the three-point line was a big thing, but in gymnasts, the scoring system has changed so much, and like it favors Simone Biles. They actually had to like change it a little bit so it doesn't change her so much. So yeah, I don't think you shouldn't walk. You really shouldn't. You shouldn't walk around with a goat embroiled onto you. Maybe when it's all said and done and your competition days are over, and if you're the clear cut, but no, I mean, I think this does take away from her legacy. But again, I'm saying that, she had, once it got to the level, her stress, once it got to the level of the twisties, she had no, she did the smart thing. But what I'm trying to say is the greatest of all time athletes have a way in my opinion, of not letting it get that far. That's just I'm not a psychologist. I am a doctor, but not a doctor in the medical field and not a doctor in psychology or anything like that. I just want to make an appeal. Let's not make her a hero for this, but not, let's not vilify her either or call her selfish. She did the smart thing. Will it hurt her legacy a little bit? Yeah. Should it? Well, it probably should, just because her ability to control stress and anxiety. But again, I'm not trying to take things away from her. When we judge the greatest of all time, we judge it by accomplishments, and I personally judge it by accomplishments on the biggest stage of them all, on the Olympics. Well, when you try to put in the scoring system along with how the scoring system's changed and compare her number of medals in two Olympics with others, there's not that big of a separation as some people think. Anyway, thank you for watching. God bless you.